Friends, after what we have just heard from Krishna Sopti, I feel there is really nothing to add. She has really summed up so beautifully what many of us have felt. But one has to speak. I will not speak about history, because I thought that Irfan Habib did a superb job on that. I would like to speak about something which worries me, because I think it's a much bigger, deeper attack. And that is the attack not just on history, on literature, it's the attack on intellectuals. I think that we are now going through a period of anti-intellectualism. And let me try and speak about that. I will soon be 84 years old. And I started teaching when I was 28 years. I've lectured in many out-of-the-way places, which I specially chose to lecture in because I thought this was one way of getting to know the country. I've also lectured in some pretty top universities. Last week, I went to Bombay to give a lecture in a college, and for the first time in my life, the police rang me up at 10 o'clock in the morning. The lecture was at 5, and insisted that I take police protection. I tried my best to dissuade them and kept insisting that I didn't need it, but they absolutely insisted, and they came and they spent the day at the house where I was staying and went with me in the evening to the college. The fear was that there are certain elements, we know who they are, part of the coalition BJP government that might throw ink or worse on me. So the police were extremely civil, very firm, very insistent about protecting me. I came home that evening after a long lecture and a long question-answer session, which was extremely lively, very useful. There were about 800 people present, and we went back and forth on all the issues. I came home in the evening feeling deeply depressed, because after 68 years of independence, I thought it is not possible for an academic to give an academic lecture on the subject of secularism without needing police protection. What have we reduced ourselves to? What have we reduced ourselves to as a nation and a society? Is this something that we should be proud of? The protests of those of us who have raised the issue of the increasing violence and intolerance are being taunted. It is referred to as a manufactured rebellion, and various speakers before me have referred to that. To manufacture is to make something by hand which exists and is tangible. This protest was not something that was suddenly ballooned up out of hot air. It has been a spontaneous anguish of many Indians who do not like the way in which our society and values are currently being mangled. The protest has been registered all over the country and continues to be so by people in various professions, not just by lefties, but, as was mentioned earlier, by business tycoons, by the governor of the Reserve Bank. And to call this a rebellion can only be described as bizarre. A rebellion is a movement against the existence of the state. we are not demanding the removal of the state. We are demanding that the crisis of murder and mayhem that has overtaken Indian society should be brought to an end. So what am I and many others, many present in this hall and many others, protesting about? We are objecting to a situation in which our society is one where books are being banned, where senior members of the BJP party ask for the burning of books, such as those of the late Bipin Chandra and myself, by the inking of faces of people who want to debate issues of foreign policy and public policy, by the assassination of rational thinkers, by the lynching of people rumored to have expressed the right to eat what they want, by the explaining away of the daily rape of women because the mindset of the men in power cannot come to terms with the idea of liberated women, and by Dalits being brutally killed. Why? Because they are aspiring to a better life. The acts that we are protesting against are not new. In the past, they have been sporadic acts, and each time many of us protested, and they have been dismissed as problems of law and order alone. In the past year, however, there has been a striking increase of such acts. The terrorist organizations, which I often refer to as the underbelly of the Sangh Parivar, whom we all call euphemistically fringe elements, have succeeded in creating an atmosphere of fear, violence, and acute disharmony. It is no longer only a law and order problem. The attempt is to control society, and especially those threatened by instilling fear. The question of which party is in power in a particular state is really, it seems to me, irrelevant. All this is happening because the essential quality of governance has declined. This decline, not unknown in the recent past, is now becoming more and more evident. The fringe elements are the ones who are calling the shots, literally and metaphorically. One is asking, who has the power and the authority to stop such crimes? Or will the general silence continue? Surely, a central government can complain effectively to state governments and can certainly exercise control over the fringe elements in its own party. Accusations have been made against us as protesters that we never protested in the past, that we have only protested against the RSS and their versions of the Hindu Rashtra and the Hindu religion, and not against others. May I take this opportunity to mention that many of us have protested against many events in the last 50 years. And let me just give you a little litany of these protests. The emergency in 1975, where some of us who objected strongly were harangued by the government of Mrs. Gandhi, whom I, for one, didn't support, even though I have been and remain a great admirer of Nehru. We protested against the genocide of the Sikhs in 1984 and supported the efforts of those that were inquiring into it. We objected against the fatwa against Salman Rushdie. We protested against what I think legitimately can be called the manufactured history of the Ram Janmabhoomi and the destruction of the Babri Masjid, about which some of us even wrote a book It was called The Anatomy of a Confrontation. But of course, the media and the government are not exactly associated with reading books. I protested also, as many of us historians did, I was not the only one, against the Communist Party Marxist and their actions in Nandigram. And in 2005, when UPA 1 was in power, a number of us protested against professional bodies like councils, institutes, and academies still remaining under the control of the government. We demanded that they should be made autonomous bodies run by professionals without government appointees to control the votes. And more recently, some of us also protested against the fatwa condemning A.R. Rahman. When I look back on this, I seem to think that I've spent all my life doing two things. One, writing heavy tomes on history, which most people find difficult to read, and actively protesting against the curtailing of the freedom of speech and human rights. And yet, I am described as someone who never protested. Why don't the BJP and the RSS and the media do some little homework on the people whom they rush to accuse of being prejudiced? When the media and political parties tell such blatant lies about people, one loses all respect for them. The latest media report, which is rather amusing, states that I have also returned the 2 awards, Padma Awards, given to me by the government. Of course, the joke is that I never accepted the awards, so I have nothing to return. But on this question, let's clarify one thing that is being made much of. Are these state awards or government awards? I would like to say categorically that, to my way of thinking, they are government awards, and that is why I have twice declined Padma awards from Congress governments. One can always tell when you wake up on the 26th of January and you look at the list of awardees, you can always tell which political party is in power. They can only be treated as state awards if the Home Ministry and the specialized ministries are not involved in the selection of awardees. So, the question, the accusation that has been made, the question that has been raised that we are insulting the nation by returning the awards is simply not a viable question. In its inability to control its mobs, the only comeback that the BJP has is to describe the protesters as leftists or instigated by the Congress Party. Many of us are leftists, but many of us are not leftists. What the protest is about is the need for a liberal space, and this has been emphasized again and again by the speakers this afternoon. The need for a liberal space to discuss the issues that face us in society. How can we remove the current fear? Why should Perumal Murugan have to forswear ever writing another novel just because the Hindu Munani will not allow him to do so? We were promised the utopia of development in the 2014 election. But is this what was meant by development? It's a question we have to ask. Development means attention to the basic human rights that any civilized society can claim. Food for all, drinking water for all, education and health care for all, employment, equal rights as citizens, and social justice. Have we got any further in this? We blame the previous UPA government for doing too little, but we remain at a standstill with this government. And then we are cynically told that civil society should be giving its attention to the poverty of the country. If civil society can remove the poverty of the country, then why do we need governance? The media claims to be debating the subjects of imminent importance. For every subject, there are political party spokespersons, often for no reason except habit. They shout at each other so loudly and deafeningly, and interrupt each other with such frequency that they are as good as saying nothing. The worst was the recent disrespect by the political spokesperson towards the eminent scientist, Professor B.M. Bhargava. The latter was making the interesting point, valuable point, that a number of scientists who have recently protested have spoken up in defense of rational thinking and the need for a scientific temper, and that many of these scientists are not just footloose researchers, but are respected heads of scientific institutions. Professor Bhargava's remarks were rudely shouted down. And I would simply like to say that if politicians do not have the civility to debate an issue without being rude and crass, it might be more to the point to simply exclude them from media debates. Even the anchors seem now to be losing control over them. Are these then the new middle-class manners and values? Indian civilization, which we're all so fond of quoting, those in authority and those without authority, once gave priority to respecting opposing views in the course of a debate, however much one may have disagreed with such views. That is not the case today. The culture of anti-intellectualism is busy manufacturing public opinion based on these dubious values. I was amused, in fact, to read that the RSS is accusing the protesting intellectuals of intolerance. Why? How do they define the intolerance? Because these intellectuals do not agree with the definition of Hinduism as defined by the RSS. Does this mean that the intellectual must conform to just the one ideology put out by the RSS? Debate does require a civil dialogue. Given that the followers of the RSS believe that they must spit venomous abuse at those that disagree with its ideology, and I speak from experience, there can be no dialogue. But if there is to be a wider dialogue, then inevitably one has to ask the question of how we proceed to do this. Do we demand that the present government cleanse itself by disassociating the government with those in the party that make or insinuate hate speeches and indulge in acts of violence and terror, the kind of thing that any good, responsible government would do? It can perhaps even return to its agenda of trying to bring in development without justifying the activities of the underbelly of the party. This means postponing smart cities and bullet trains and focusing on the essentials of human needs so desperately requiring priority. It can make professional bodies autonomous and answerable to peers and professionals for their actions by removing the control of government appointees and thereby improving, actually, the intellectual quality of such institutions as well. The bona fides of the government might improve if there was extensive consultation and participation in governance by those qualified to do so, and not just by a small group of people belonging to a particular political party. The question is, and this is where I'll stop, the question is, will this happen? Thank you.